I was about 14 at the time. I had skipped school and decided to go to the mall. Not the smartest decision, especially since this particular mall had a reputation. It was known for having creepy teenagers and grown men who stalked or harassed girls. I'd had a few minor run-ins before, but it was 8 a.m., broad daylight. I figured I'd be fine. I was wrong, and I haven't gone back to the mall alone since. I got off the bus and headed to the entrance with a small playground in front of it. I thought being near kids and families would be safer, so I sat on the swing and pulled out my phone to pass some time before heading home. There was an older woman and her granddaughter playing nearby, and their presence made me feel a bit more secure. Maybe 5 minutes passed before I heard loud voices and laughter. Teenage boys. I looked up and saw them running around, causing chaos. My stomach dropped. I recognized them immediately. Pretty much everyone in town knew who they were. Troublemakers, older than me, and definitely not the kind of people you wanted to be alone around. They started moving in my direction and subtly moving closer. I stood up quickly and went inside the mall, hoping to lose them in the crowd. I ducked into a store to buy something small and distract myself. I didn't see or hear them during the walk to the store or on the way back. I sat down on one of the couches in the mall and tried to calm down. For a moment, I thought I lost them, but I still didn't let myself relax. Not fully. A few minutes later, I looked up from my phone and saw them again. This time I didn't hesitate. I got up and headed straight for the bathroom. The hallway to the restroom was long and mostly empty, but I walked faster when I noticed them trailing behind me. I rushed into the girls' bathroom and locked myself in a stall. I stayed there for what felt like forever, probably 30 to 40 minutes, just scrolling on my phone, waiting for them to give up and leave. When I finally stepped out and washed my hands, that moment of relief vanished. There they were, 6 boys peeking into the girls' bathroom. There was no door, just an open entrance, and some of them were already halfway inside. I heard one of them say, "Yeah, I think it's her," and they started laughing. I froze. My brain was racing. Should I just walk past them and hope for the best? Should I call someone? Should I ask for help? I looked around and saw a few women in the bathroom. One of them, maybe around 40, was drying her hands. I hesitated. Would she think I was overreacting? Crazy? But I couldn't risk it. I built up the courage and asked, trembling, "Excuse me, can I walk out with you? There's a group of boys who have been following me all morning, and they're waiting outside." There was a pause. I immediately regretted speaking, but then she nodded. Of course. We walked out together, and her husband was waiting just outside the bathroom. Seeing him filled me with a massive sense of relief. I knew those boys wouldn't think twice about following me now. She quickly filled her husband in. He looked confused at first, maybe not fully convinced, but when she asked if he would walk us to the main exit, he agreed. As we walked, I explained the situation more clearly. They listened, and I could tell that they were beginning to understand the seriousness of it. When we reached the end of the hallway that turned into a store, I continued towards the exit, walking as fast as I could. I passed a security guard on the way out, and while I felt a bit safer, I didn't breathe easy until I was outside, finally getting some fresh air. Only then did I realize how panicked I had been. I ran to the nearest bus stop that felt far enough from the mall and waited there. I didn't care if anyone found out that I skipped school that day. I just wanted to get home. Since then, I've done everything I can to avoid them all. I still think about how things could have gone differently if I hadn't been paying attention, or if that woman and her husband hadn't been there. I don't want to imagine what would have happened if I had walked out of the bathroom alone. To that couple, thank you. You probably have no idea how much you helped me that day. This happened about 3 years ago, So I was 16 at the time. I remember it being a warm September day. I had the day off from work and decided to hang out with my best friend. We'll call her Abby. I had just gotten my license that spring, so I was super hyped about driving around town on my own. I pulled up to Abby's place and we were trying to figure out what to do. We decided to skip making plans with friends and instead cook dinner for her mom and stepdad. So, we hopped in my car and headed to Walmart to grab the ingredients. And of course, we couldn't resist grabbing some cake mix on the way out. While we were shopping, we kept crossing paths with this guy, probably in his mid 50s, but didn't think too much of it since the store was pretty crowded. We checked out and walked to my car, and that's when we noticed the same guy loading groceries into his trunk. I remember joking to Abby, saying something like, "Oh, is that your new boyfriend? Why don't you go get his number?" We laughed, maybe a little too loudly because it caught his attention. He turned to us and complimented our hair, then asked if we were sisters. We told him we were, which wasn't true, thanked him, and wished him a good day. Honestly, in our town, guys randomly complimenting girls isn't unusual, so we just brushed it off. We got into my car. I locked the doors as always, and we laughed about how creepy his eyes looked. But here's where things started to get weird. Apparently, he saw us walk to my car because instead of heading towards the exit, he drove slowly behind us, opposite of where the exit was. I saw him staring at my car through the rearview mirror and looked at Abby like, "Holy shit, it's the same creep." We burst out laughing again, probably as a way to cope, and once he drove off, we did too. The rest of the night was chill. We made dinner, hung out, and eventually crashed. A few days passed and I had completely forgotten about it until one day at work. I was running food to tables, helping out the servers, when I dropped a plate off to a guy who looked way too surprised to see me. At first, I didn't recognize him until I saw his eyes, the same unsettling stare. Yep, it was Walmart guy. I quickly placed the food down, asked if he needed anything, and booked it to the bathroom to text Abby. "Dude, that creepy guy from Walmart is literally at my restaurant right now, and I just served him." Hours went by, and he stayed at the bar, drinking alone. I mentioned it to some coworkers, and they were like, he's probably just a lonely old guy. Eventually, my manager sent me home since it was slow. As I walked to my car, I heard the restaurant door swing open, and there he was, following behind me. He called out, trying to start a conversation. I turned around and he hit me with, "So, does a pretty lady like you have a boyfriend?" I told him I did, and that my boyfriend worked at the restaurant. A total lie. He got closer, close enough that I could smell the alcohol on his breath, and said, "Would you mind if you and I became friends?" I was totally creeped out. I panicked and blurted out, "I'm 16, thinking that would get him to back off. Spoiler alert, it didn't. If anything, it seemed to make him more interested. I quickly said goodbye, walked to my car, and drove off, hearing him mumble something under his breath as I left. I was shaken. I called Abby, then told my mom when I got home. She warned me to stay alert because clearly, this guy had a thing for underage girls and didn't care who saw it. Fast forward a week. I'm at work again, and guess who's back? Yep, Creeper is at the bar, slamming beers like it's his job. I told my manager I wasn't comfortable serving his area and filled her in on the whole story. She got it and moved me to the registers instead. At one point, he stomped off to the bathroom and slammed the door so hard the whole restaurant went silent. He looked back at everyone and locked eyes with me again. I'd had enough. I just walked back into the kitchen and hid. 10 minutes later, the police showed up asking to review footage from the previous Saturday. My manager took them to the office and we were all kind of confused. About 40 minutes passed, and the cops walk over to the bar and arrest him right then and there. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I ran over to my manager like, what just happened? Turns out, he was under investigation for spiking a young woman's drink at our restaurant. The cameras caught him in the act after she filed a police report the next day. I haven't seen him since, except in my nightmares. Hopefully he's still rotting in jail somewhere, finally getting help, or at least a harsh wake-up call. Anyways, ladies, always keep your eyes out for each other. Creeps don't always wear red flags. Sometimes they come in the form of a lonely old guy with a drink in his hand and way too much interest in teenage girls. I don't usually shop late, but this happened about 6 months ago when I had one of those weird, restless nights where nothing feels right. I couldn't sleep. I scrolled through every app on my phone at least twice. So by that point, suddenly going to Walmart at 1:30 a.m. to buy frozen pizza feels like the best plan I've had all day. So I got in my car and drove to the 24-hour Walmart a few miles away. The parking lot was mostly empty, except for a couple cars clustered near the entrance and an old RV parked further out under a busted light. I remember it because it looked like it hadn't moved in days. Inside, the store was dead quiet. There were maybe 4 people in the entire place, including 2 employees who looked like they wanted nothing more than to be literally anywhere else. I wasn't even in there for 5 minutes when I saw him. A tall guy, maybe in his 40s, dressed too clean for that time of night. Pressed slacks, button-up shirt, black shiny shoes. He didn't have a cart or basket or anything. He just walked slowly down the cereal aisle with his hands folded behind his back, as if he was inspecting something. What got me was how quiet he was. No footsteps, shuffle, just appeared when I turned around the aisle. I gave him an awkward nod that you give people when you're passing by, and he just smiled tight-lipped, didn't say anything. I moved on quick. There was something about his eyes that felt wrong. Not dangerous exactly, but off, as if he was watching something behind me. I got my frozen stuff, some snacks, and started heading out towards the checkout when I noticed something strange. Every aisle I went into, he would show up too. Not right away, but like 30 seconds later, he would just be there. Sometimes at the end of the aisle, sometimes halfway down, staring at the shelves but not really looking at anything. Still no cart, still nothing in his hands. I started getting paranoid. Maybe he was just another late night shopper with weird habits. Maybe I was just overthinking it. But then came the toy section. I cut through to get to the front faster. It was completely empty. Lights were sort of dimmed until I walked through, triggering them. I was walking past the action figures when I heard something drop behind me. I turned around. No one was there. But there was a small rubber ball, a bouncy ball, rolling slowly towards me from the end of the aisle. I picked it up, looked around. Still no one. I started walking again, and that's when I heard a voice from behind me, low and calm. You dropped something. I turned around fast. He was standing 10 feet away from me, the man from earlier. His hands were still behind his back. He was smiling, but this time it looked almost proud, like he was happy I turned around. I didn't say anything, just held up the ball and said, "This isn't mine." He tilted his head and then, without a word, turned and walked away. I waited a solid minute before moving again, just standing there, heart racing, listening for his footsteps. Nothing. I went straight to the self-checkout and paid as fast as I could. When I left the store, the parking lot was even more empty than before. Just my car and the RV. Its curtains were still drawn, no lights inside. I got in my car, locked the doors immediately, and started the engine. Before I could put it in gear, I looked in the rearview mirror. The man was standing in the middle of the parking lot. No bag, no cart, just standing there, facing in the direction of my car. I reversed and drove off without even looking back. Now, here's the part that really messes with me. A couple weeks later, I was scrolling on Reddit late at night, some thread about creepy real life encounters. Someone mentioned a guy at Walmart at 2 a.m. Tall, clean clothes, no cart, always smiling. They described the exact same smile. Someone else chimed in and had almost the same exact story from a different state. The one similarity that was always the same was the words, "You dropped something." I don't know. It can't be the same guy, but it's just creepy. And I don't think I'll be going to Walmart late at night anymore. This happened about 2 years ago, and I still think about it. It was a Wednesday afternoon in May. I was at a large outdoor mall in Columbus, Ohio, planning to do a little shopping before heading to work nearby at 2 p.m. I parked on the first floor of the parking garage, just a row across from the main entrance to the indoor section of the mall, near the back. As soon as I parked, I made eye contact with this guy walking down the next row over. I was 26 at the time, and he looked to be about my age, maybe a little younger. He suddenly turned and started walking towards me. I immediately looked down and began gathering my things, hoping he would just pass by. But then, knock knock, he tapped on my window. I can't remember if my window was already halfway down or if I rolled it down more, but it was partially open. He asked me if I knew where the nearest restroom was. I told him that there is one just inside the mall entrance, literally right across from us. He said he didn't know where that was and asked if I would show him. I pointed and said, "Just walk down this row and go through those doors. The sign's right there." He didn't budge. He just stood there, staring at me through the window like he was waiting for something. The silence stretched, and I realized he was expecting me to physically get out and lead him there. When it became clear I wasn't going to move, he suddenly asked, "Can I hop in your back seat real quick?" My confusion turned to full-blown panic. I froze. I don't even remember what I said, if anything. Then he started doubling down. He asked again to get in the back seat, and then said, "Do you want to hook up in the back?" I was in total shock, and for some reason, probably out of nervous politeness, I just blurted out, "No thank you, I have a boyfriend, I'm sorry." He smiled and said, "That's okay, I have a girlfriend, I love her." The conversation kept going like that, me awkwardly apologizing, saying I needed to leave to get to work, while he kept texting on his phone between sentences, barely acknowledging my words. I was terrified to make a sudden move, afraid that locking my door might trigger him to do something worse. I didn't know if he was alone. I didn't know if someone else was watching. My brain was screaming, "Don't escalate it." Eventually, I worked up enough courage to start the car. I put it in reverse and peeled out of there as fast as I could. I drove a few blocks away to my job, rushed inside, and immediately called mall security. I have no idea what his intentions were. Maybe he generally wanted to hook up, which, what? Who approaches someone in a parked car like that? Maybe it was bait for something worse. Robbery, trafficking, or who knows what. He looked like a totally normal guy until the conversation took a sharp, creepy turn. What's even more unsettling is that I was driving a rental car at the time. My own car had been stolen just 3 weeks earlier. I'm so thankful he didn't see what I usually drive, in case he caught the plate, make or model to find me later. This whole encounter still gives me chills. What do you think his deal was? Has anything like this ever happened to you? I sold the socks off my feet for $10. Yep, someone literally bought the socks off my feet at the grocery store. For quick context, I'm a 30-year-old woman living in Midwest USA. This happened a week ago at my local grocery store. I was doing a quick run for a few things and noticed a man near me in the dairy section giving me that look. You know that one. Just a little too much eye contact. I gave him a polite smile and kept moving. After checking out and bagging my groceries, I headed to my car. I started loading things in my trunk when I suddenly noticed the same man pulling up behind my vehicle. He gets out and says, "Hey, I have a question for you." Thinking nothing much of it, I said, "Sure, what's up?" "Can I buy your socks?" I blinked. "Sorry, what?" He repeats, "Can I buy your socks? I'll give you $10 for the socks on your feet." At this point, I'm just standing there like, did I hear that right? So I asked, why? He shrugs and says, "You know, it's kind of my thing." "Like a foot fetish thing?" He nods. "Yeah, something like that." Now, as this incredibly bizarre conversation is happening, he has his cart positioned in a way that blocks my in and starts reaching into his inner jacket pocket. Now listen, I'm a woman. I'm always aware of my surroundings, and the second he started to reach into his coat, my brain went full of DEFCON. 1. I'm thinking, he's about to pull something out, and I'm about to be unalived over a pair of Target ankle socks. So I say, "Hold on, let me just put my cart back." I used my walk to try to calm down and gather my thoughts, but when I got back to my car, he had gotten out of his vehicle and was now standing right next to the driver's side. Panic mode activated. At this point, I was full on fight, flight, or freeze, and I froze. I sat down in my driver's seat with the door still open, and with shaky hands, I peeled off my socks and handed it to him. He smiled, took the socks, and said, "Thank you. You're beautiful. Your feet are so pretty." Then he handed me a crumpled up $10 bill and walked back to his car, and just like that, he drove away. Let me tell you, this is by far the creepiest, weirdest, and most unsettling thing that's ever happened to me. And yeah, I haven't worn socks in public since. So what do you think? What would you have done in this situation? This happened recently, and I'm still a little shaken up. I'm a 19-year-old woman, and I was shopping alone at my local Walmart late in the afternoon. I only needed a few things, so I grabbed a cart and headed straight to the home and pharmacy section. I stopped in the aisle with the protein bars to look for something specific, parking my cart to the side. The store wasn't crowded, and at that moment, the aisle was completely empty. That's when a man suddenly approached me from the side and said something. I had never seen him before. I didn't see where he came from. He didn't have a cart or any items with him, and he was way taller than me, which immediately put me on edge. Since I was alone, I stayed alert and kept my distance. I didn't catch what he said the first time, so I asked, "Huh?" He repeated himself and asked if I was from a certain township, one that's 45 minutes away from where we were. My gut immediately told me something wasn't right. I quickly said, "No," and started to walk away, trying to end the conversation. But then he said, "You're very pretty." At this point, I gave him an awkward smile and kept moving, clearly uncomfortable and not interested in engaging. But he kept going and asked, "Are you single?" That's when I snapped out of any politeness and said firmly, "Not interested," before walking away as fast as I could. I felt completely unsettled. Something about the way he approached me, seemingly out of nowhere, knowing I was alone, asking if I was from a random town, then immediately complimenting me, set off all of my alarms. He didn't look threatening, but the situation itself felt off. After that, I headed to the checkout, constantly scanning the area to make sure he wasn't nearby. I saw him walking down the opposite direction, which was a huge relief. I got to my car quickly, made sure no one was around, and left right away. Maybe he was harmless, maybe he wasn't, but his behavior, his body language, and the fact that I was alone all combined into a huge red flag. I'm really glad I trusted my instincts. My mom and grandparents lived in the same small town for years. My grandma was a physician, now retired, and my mom was a child psychologist. Since there aren't many stores in the area, they frequented one in particular where all of the staff knew them well. One winter day, my mom went to the store as usual. While she was picking something off the shelf, a little girl, maybe 8 or 10, came up and stood right next to her. My mom looked at the girl, expecting her to say something, but she just stood there silently. My mom didn't think much of it, picked up her item, and moved to another shelf. A few seconds later, the same girl followed her and again stood close, pretending to look at an item but not speaking. It was odd. My mom changed aisles again and eventually lost sight of the girl for a bit. Then, she noticed the girl speaking to one of the saleswomen and pointing in her direction. My mom still didn't think much of it and went to the register to pay before she left the store. The next day when she came back, one of the saleswomen approached her and quietly said, "Hey, just so you know, the girl from yesterday wanted us to call the police because she said you were acting like a pedophile towards her." Needless to say, my mom was shocked. Luckily, the staff didn't act on the accusations right away. They knew my mom and family well and decided to check the security footage first. On the footage, they saw clearly that the girl had followed my mom around the store and had approached her first, not the other way around. When the staff member confronted the girl about what she said, she left quickly. Two men were waiting for her outside. A few weeks later, my mom saw the same girl again, this time on our street. She was walking quickly, flanked by two men, one on each side. It was the middle of the day and our street is usually empty, so my mom didn't feel safe or think it was wise to approach them. She never saw the girl again after that. When I was 4 years old, my family, newly arrived from Mexico, visited Walmart in South Texas. My parents, still learning English, asked me to stay with my father while my mother shopped. As I walked towards him, a woman in her 30s approached me. She spoke to me in English, which I didn't fully understand at the time, and suggested we find my parents together. Confused and trusting, I followed her to her car, and we drove away. Meanwhile, my father searched the store frantically, starting in the Hot Wheels aisle, but he couldn't find me. Panic set in, and he alerted others, and soon an Amber Alert was issued. After 2 days, the woman was apprehended when authorities traced her vehicle's license plate. It was later revealed that she was mentally ill. This incident occurred in 2014, and although I was young, I still vividly remember her face. It taught me that not all kidnappers fit the stereotypical image. Some appear ordinary, blending into everyday life.